So, here's some here's something I wrote about my experience that I had over the summer. Um, was uh didn't have anything to drink then, so um there was a bottle, like an old bottle of like Robitussin sitting around. Um, I don't recommend doing this, by the way. Um, it's probably not safe. It depends which kind you get. You need to get the kind that has like only DXM in it. If you get one of the other ones that's like got a bunch of acetaminophen or guaifenesin, um, you might like overdose on that stuff. You'd probably just make yourself throw up and it'd be unpleasant, and then you'd be high at the same time. But um, I had a specific kind of Robitussin in my house, and I went ahead and pretty much drank the whole bottle, and I had this really cool experience. You know, um, and then I smoked just a little bit of pot on top of that, and I went and like it like blew my mind. And I tried to write down as coherently as I could shortly after that experience what I had gone through. I don't think I had quite come back to the, like a normal state of mind yet. So I'm not going to read word for word what I wrote. I'll have to like kind of, you know, almost like translate what I meant. Um, but I'm writing the next day. Yesterday, I drank a bottle of cough medicine and I felt inspired to write all over my walls in permanent marker. Everything felt so clear at the time, and that was what was really nice about the kind of high I got. Is like it wasn't like I was tripping. It didn't feel like I was tripping. People call it robo tripping, but it just felt like everything was like I was like really like in my surroundings, and at the same time like totally detached from them. And it felt so clear. Like it felt like way better than real life. Like I felt like I was like totally like in tune. But anyway, it felt so clear at the time. It felt so clear that the main problem in my life is that I do pretty much anything but loving other people. That everything I've done was for some reason other than loving somebody else. That I don't know whether I do until I can tell for sure what my intentions are. It was kind of like a revelation. It was like I can't like a significant component of like actually loving anyone else resides with your intentions. Not just your actions, not just the way you're acting upon them, or the effects that are coming from that, but like your actual like intention for their well-being. you know um it also occurred to me how tragic it is that evangelists try to convince people of nonsense instead of just preaching the real message. Love each other. you know that was something I was thinking about, how like people like Christian apologists like emphasize trying to like prove in some capacity that God exists, or that Jesus definitely existed, and or that certain elements of the gospels literally happened, like the like that he was crucified, where it was said that he was, and that he was, that he actually did rise from the dead, and that there are like eyewitness accounts of that, or that the curtain at the temple tore. And it's like I realized in this state that kind of like all of that's beside the point. Is that the religion isn't even supposed to be about Christ. It was supposed to be about his message. And one of the things that I felt inspired to, I painted over it since then, but I wrote a bunch of things all over the walls because I was like so into it. I felt like a kid again, you know, like how kids like drawing walls with crayons. Like I had this like impulse to like, you know, and I was kind of doing it, but you know, I was like totally like removed from it at the same time. And one of the things there was like, why when someone points do we look at his finger? Why do we confuse the message with the messenger? You know, I was writing a bunch of stuff like that. Another thing I wrote was, love isn't supposed to be a commodity or a strategy or an imposition or a liability or a means to have the high ground morally. And that made total sense at the time, although now, at the time I was writing this, like the next day, although now maybe it does just seem delusional, you know. Love isn't real. That's the state I was in right after this. People are just things interacting with each other like objects and stimulating themselves, you know. And then I question, you know, why am I even concerned with love? Is this like really about like how I'm seeing myself, or is this about something I'm trying to accomplish? Like, am I just using the concept of love to get other things I want in my life that don't really even matter? And I write like a paragraph that's kind of incoherent and rambling, like dismissing the idea of love. So I'll just kind of breeze through that. And I say, so anyway, you know, when I was just on the cough medicine before I smoked the pot, it seemed like love was the universal truth that we should all embrace. Like that was the thing that was good for us, you know. And it seemed almost like it was an objective truth, you know. That's how potent it seemed, you know. I think cough medicine must be the love drug. I don't know. But then I smoked a little pot on top of that, and I went through this. I wasn't like, it's hard to describe. Like I wasn't like seriously like hallucinating. Like I was confused about whether what I was seeing was real. You know, it was more like kind of like this augmented experience where I was like really visualizing things in my mind, and it was like, you know, it was like projected outside, but like I could tell the difference. Like I could tell like what was actually there and what wasn't. But I was getting these like really cool like visuals after I smoked the pot, and it was like I went through this vortex of eyes, and I saw all of my memories scattered around in the air. That's the best way I can describe it. It was like, I usually I'm not able to visualize things at all either, so that might be part of it. Like I was actually like, whenever, if I don't smoke weed very often, but if I do, I will actually like be getting like, you know, images in my head, and I usually like, I don't like have the ability to visualize anything. And I'll be seeing all this stuff in my head. And at the time, it was like there was all this stuff coming up, you know, and it was like almost like there was like I was looking around like at the ceiling and the walls, and I had like this inner landscape of like associated images that was somehow isomorphic to my surroundings, and I was like mapping them on to my surroundings, you know. And I was having almost like this synesthetic experience, you know. Like I was experiencing like a kind of synesthesia where like they were like more than just images, like they were like, you know, jam-packed with like all this like sensory information, and it almost felt like I was like breathing them all in at once. And you know, they even imagery that I could recognize from dreams that I knew like weren't from real life, felt almost as real. And and I was experiencing all that, and then I left that behind, and I had this feeling like I was becoming one with the universe, which is I guess kind of dull now. I mean, as far as, I don't know if I would call it felt like a kind of like a psychedelic experience, I guess. I've never like actually like tried acid or shrooms or anything, but I had that experience with this combination of substances where it was like I felt like it was kind of like merging, into the universe, and I was like leaving like my my own localized like perspective. So I left behind all these visuals and like memories, and felt like I was becoming one with the universe, which is nothing like what we think it is. At least, what I was experiencing was pretty much had like nothing to do with like the way I typically think of reality in the universe, if I think about it at all. It was like it felt like there was a fragment of consciousness that was localized to my body, while the rest of it was spread out over this vast net that everything else came from somehow. And you know what I realized when this happened? So when I was just on the cough medicine, it was like, everything is love, da 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 da. All you need is love, da 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 da. And I was like drawing on the walls. I smoked a little pot, and it's like the state of mind I got would just like totally shift, and I got like outside of that even, and it was like love isn't the one cosmic truth or whatever we make it out to be. It's an instinct for mammals and a virtue for human beings, but it's just an idea otherwise. Just how everything is an idea. And I went on this metaphysical journey that tore the idea of love to shreds. And it wasn't like a bad trip either. Like, that sounds like that would be a bad trip, but it was actually very pleasant. It was like my perspective was a convection cell in outer space somewhere, and I was seeing how love connects you to what's around you and diminishes you to the extent that you become your surroundings, and you become one with everything else. That's like the force of love was like it was something that was like, I guess, like connecting everything, but then that means that you may as well be the thing that is eating another as well as the thing that is getting eaten. So like the corollary to being one with everything was this kind of like non-duality that meant that you were like everything and its opposite at the same time. You were, the prey as well as the predator. You were, you were the person inflicting suffering as well as the one it was being inflicted upon. That you could just as easily be cruel as you could be kind, and that all had a place, just whichever role you were acting out, and you'd think if you were motivated by love that you could only, behave in one direction, but you could end up playing out a role that counterbalanced, the one you would think you should be playing, and it would be, I don't know, I guess just as valid. So, I mean, it was almost, and there was like almost like this ominous feeling to it, that and in a sense, you know, from a certain perspective, it was almost like love made you evil. At least from the perspective of anything that wasn't in that same state. It was like love was just another state to be in and wasn't superior to any one of another states I was passing through. And then in the end, it was just like I was just experiencing like all these ideas I had going through my head. It was like I was just experiencing all as just like information, you know. And it seemed like, you know, our lives seem so real while we're living them, but then you zoom out and it was just a little pool of information that had already been there. Like I was getting this image of how I came to be inhabiting the life I am now, and it was like there was this vast net that just like it was just like this huge pattern, you know, expansive pattern, and I had been like observing it, you know, I'd been like inside of it but still outside of it somehow, and I had like zoomed into like, you know, a single part of this, and I was like kind of like I had like, you know, like my perspective had shrunk down so much that I got stuck as the person I am now, you know, and it felt like I couldn't get out of it, but it was more like, you know, it's like I will when it's over, but right now it's kind of like it's almost like I'm reading it, you know, like I'm like downloading like the information that was in that mote of this elaborate pattern that I'd seen, you know. And when I was in this state, I was able to kind of see outside of it and see like, oh, that wasn't actually me. It was just like I'm this thing that really has like no definition, and I just kind of like zoomed in on it, and then I was, you know, from birth to death, like I was seeing like this, and this like the sensation of time was just kind of like, you know, just like this like download rate or something. Information, I don't know, that doesn't sound very coherent, but it was like your perspective had zoomed in on this tiny region of some impossibly vast and varied structure. Like it wasn't like nothing was like the way was the way like I would typically think of it as being, you know. It was more like everything we are and do and understand was like it was all interlaced in like this intricate pattern, and it was just like an elaborate pattern within something else. And I realized when I was in this state, I was kind of like, I felt like I was kind of like frozen there, you know, and I like had like this sense of like I could see like it, like everything from like my past to like my future, and ultimately like how it kind of like how it connected to, you know, everything else from that point on. And I had this feeling, it's like, oh, I realized like, oh, I was never here. I wasn't ever actually here. And I was actually saying that out loud to myself, I think. At some point I was repeating that over and over. I was never actually here, you know. It just felt like I was a part of like some like quantum of like consciousness that had gotten itself pinched off from the rest temporarily. And I thought that the location that I had been pinched off was me. Like I'd identified with the location in this vast like pattern, you know. It was hard to explain, but it came back around to how inevitably this connectedness I was experiencing at the time would progress to fragmentation and individuation once again, and how we're eternally oscillating between these states of being. And while I was like this, I looked at all the crap I'd written on the walls when I was just on the cough medicine, and it was like it just all kind of took on like this irrelevance to it. It was like, okay, so what, love is all you need, whatever, yeah, that's nice, It all seems so true in one state of mind, while in this new one, it was all the dim murmurings of a creature who'd had them, because they had to be expressed through it at that time. Like, it was like, I just happened, like, right before I wrote all that stuff, I just happened to be configured to write it, it didn't even mean anything. Like, I'm not actually, like, real, in the way that I think I am. And all of this, it seems like they're like, like profound revelations. They're just like little flashes of information, I guess, that I'd like encrypted in symbols, and it didn't really even mean anything. It just seemed significant to the thing that had wrote it, but the thing that had wrote it wasn't even really there for it to have any significance to, so in this, it was like it was like all these things that I've written were just the natural trajectory of this creature's thoughts, influenced by whatever they had been perturbed by immediately before. It didn't even know why it was writing them, and it was a curiosity to the thing looking at it through me in this latter state of awareness, because I didn't quite feel like that was me either. It almost felt like like I was just kind of like a vessel, like I was a sensory organ for the consciousness of the universe, and that whatever portion of it that I might identify with, the portion that got impinged off in this place temporarily, was just kind of like had like come to and was looking at it and was like, yes, this too, this is also a thing. Cause I wasn't really there anymore, but I was like a sensory organ for a blanket of consciousness that expanded well beyond all of this. And this thing that was looking through me was like, this too. And it was, I don't know, later it was disheartening that any value I could live by from this perspective, from the perspective I was at the time, after smoking the weed on top of the cough medicine, that would be like, yep, that's another thing, And then, I don't know, this is still like pretty much, I probably wasn't even like, I don't think I was like totally, I don't think I was back to normal at all by the time I was trying to write this down. But I go on rambling about how, what's the point of anything you do in life if you're not doing it out of love? Like, I can understand, a perspective where love is just as meaningful or meaningless as any other principle one could conduct themselves by, But it still seems like that's probably the thing that we're built for, And that anything else is just, you're just moving shit around, you're just doing things, you're just keeping yourself alive, you're rolling a boulder up a hill day after day, you're just maintaining something that's decaying while you're maintaining it, and it seemed to me, even after I was coming out of this, that probably the insight I had while I was tripping off of cough medicine only, before introducing any weed, was that love is the glue of our existence as human beings, and that any meaning we ascribe to things divorced from a concept of love is hollow,